On January 25, 1971, Major General Idi Amin overthrew the government of President Milton Obote. Obote, who became Uganda's first elected head of state after leading the East African nation to independence from Great Britain in 1962, was in Singapore for a Commonwealth head of government meeting when the coup happened. The emergence of Idi Amin saw Uganda experience his authoritative and decisive rule for the next 8 years, which was highlighted by harrowing anarchy, human rights abuse, nepotism, political repression, gross economic mismanagement, extrajudicial killings, ethnic persecution, and corruption were the bane of Idi Amin's rule. International observers and human rights groups have estimated the number of people killed during his regime to be between 100,000 to 500,000. Nicknamed the Butcher of Uganda, Idi Amin's seemingly erratic behavior and blatant brutality aroused disgust but also fascination around the world. While some African leaders like Muammar Gaddafi of Libya applauded him, others questioned his sanity. In this episode, we bring to your view the rise and fall of Idi Amin. The birth date of Idi Amin Dada is not known, but army documents reveal he was born in the year 1925. Amin was born in Koboko County in West Nile District, near the borders of Sudan and Congo. His father was a farmer from the Kakwak tribe, while his mother was linked to the Lugbara people, who are a central Sudan ethnic group settled in northwestern Uganda. Idi Amin's parents got separated soon after his birth. His first venture up the ladder of the military was a traditional one for poor boys with little or no training. In 1946, Amin joined the King's African Rifles as an assistant cook and would later claim he had fought with the unit in the Burma campaign, but there is no record of such. Idi Amin rose steadily through the ranks as a young soldier and fought in colonial Kenya against Mau Mau guerrillas in the mid-1950s. Soon enough, he was promoted to Sergeant Major in 1957, and in 1959 he was given a new position for native non-commissioned officers known as FND, making him one of the country's only 2 black officers. This was as a result of his leadership potential perceived by the British. At the time Uganda gained independence from the British in 1962, Idi Amin Dada held the highest rank in the Ugandan military. The first Prime Minister of Uganda, who was also the first elected leader of the country, Milton Obote, was on good terms with Idi Amin, and it was he who first approved Amin's promotion to Major and also sent him to Britain and Israel for special training. Idi Amin's upward climb continued as he was promoted to Colonel in 1964 and was appointed as the Deputy Commander of the country's Army and Air Force. However, a blot in his career would be an entry in his regimental book, indicating that in 1955 he had been infected and cured of a venereal disease repeatedly. Idi Amin was known for his insatiable love for women. In February 1966, the Ugandan parliament accused him of misappropriating $350,000 in gold and ivory gotten from guerrillas in Congo, having supplied arms to them 2 years earlier. Idi Amin had been working on orders from Obote. The 5 members of parliament who made the claims were arrested by Amin, and Obote suspended the Ugandan constitution. Milton Obote went further by placing Idi Amin in charge of all the military and the police 2 days later. This move came to be Obote's undoing. Prime Minister Obote made null and void the country's basic political formulation, under which power was shared between himself and the Kabaka of the Kingdom of Buganda, Mutesa II, who was the first president of Uganda. In May 1966, Obote sent troops led by Idi Amin to shell Mutesa's palace, and the latter escaped to the United Kingdom after a furious confrontation that led to the Battle of the Mengo Hill. That was how Obote overthrew the king and became the second president of Uganda. Idi Amin was said to usually entertain guests with gory details of the battle when he was president. In 1967, the new president abolished all kingdoms and federalism and established an executive presidency under his new Republican constitution. Obote also declared his party, the Uganda People's Congress (UPC), as the only legitimate party. As president, Milton Obote was able to introduce socialist principles and work methods which guided Uganda's development, but he left the fate of the military in Idi Amin's hands, trusting him blindly. With Obote at the helm, promotion for Idi Amin became a piece of cake. He was first promoted to the rank of Brigadier General in 1967 and then Major General. But just like how good friendships sometimes turn sour, so was the case of President Milton Obote and General Idi Amin. The Ugandan coup of January 25, 1971 was not an afterthought but was carefully masterminded. The British were alleged to have welcomed Idi Amin as a worthy successor, taking over from Obote, whom they had butted heads on several issues. President Obote had believed that Amin was plotting against him, and he tried to shut him down, but luck ran out on him when his top general made the first move by ousting him from power. Idi Amin seized power when President Obote traveled to Singapore to attend a Commonwealth Head of Government meeting and became Uganda's third president. The deposed Obote had to make his way to Tanzania in exile under the protection of President Julius Nyerere. At first, like most coups, the country celebrated. In Uganda, people danced and welcomed their new leader. Great Britain applauded the move owing to the fact that Obote's move to the left of 1970 had included plans to nationalize British-held property, and the Israelis believed the new president coming into power would benefit them as they had large building projects in the country and had worked closely with Idi Amin. The celebration did not last for long, as Idi Amin slowly manifested himself. The Ugandan army started experiencing ethnic conflicts with Amin's Nubian tribe, whom he enlisted in large numbers, killing over 1,000 soldiers from the Ekoli and Langi tribes, made up of mostly Christians. 6 weeks after Amin seized power, 32 army officers, also from Akoli and Langi tribes, were crammed into a tiny cell at Makinde prison in Kampala and blown up by a charge of dynamite. The soldiers were said to have supported Obote's government. In all, about 2/3 of the Ugandan army were executed in Amin's first year of office. The Ugandan economy also suffered a blow, as the new president ordered the printing of more money to cover the country's expenditures. Idi Amin asked the Israelis for more money and jet fighters in 1972 to fight Obote in Tanzania, but the Israelis waved his request aside as inconsequential. Undeterred, Amin traveled to Libya to get help from Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi. The Israelis' refusal to help him led to their expulsion from Uganda, bringing an abrupt end to their numerous building projects, and thus began Idi Amin's fight against Jews. Uganda's economy continued its downward spiral, leading Idi Amin on August 4, 1972, to announce that all Ugandans of Asian origin having British passports would have to leave the country after first ordering all non-citizen Asians to leave. He gave them an ultimatum of 90 days to depart the country. About 40,000 Ugandans, who were mostly third-generation descendants of workers brought by the British from India, fell into this category, and they had to leave, taking only what they could carry. This move also squashed whatever love the British had for Amin's government. It didn't end there. In October 1972, the British High Commissioner was asked to leave Uganda after he was accused of spreading malicious propaganda. This prompted Britain to cancel a £10 million development plan. Diplomatic relations with the country were also reduced to the acting High Commissioner level. The hopes of rekindling the British-Ugandan relationship were put to bed when on June 28, 1976, an Air France flight bound for Tel Aviv arrived at Entebbe Airport after being hijacked by the Palestine Liberation Operation (PLO), with whom Idi Amin was prepared to cooperate due to his hatred for the Jews. The Israelis raided Entebbe Airport to rescue the hostages, which caused a serious blow to Amin's prestige, as 8 Ugandan Air Force MiGs were destroyed. He then retaliated by ordering the recapture of an Israeli-British elderly lady, Dora Bloch, who fell ill while being held hostage and was taken to a hospital. No one ever saw or heard from her again, and on July 28, 1976, Britain completely severed diplomatic ties with Uganda. It was not until Idi Amin's government was overthrown did Britain restore diplomatic relations with the country. Former associates of Idi Amin who managed to escape his brutality revealed some of the coded vocabularies he used in dealing with his perceived enemies. The phrases, "given the VIP treatment," or "go with him to where he sleeps," meant to kill the person, while "given tea" meant whipping and dismemberment. Idi Amin flaunted his tyrannical power, staged pompous displays of majesty, and hurled insults at world leaders. He hailed German dictator Adolf Hitler and justified his actions when the latter killed about 6 million Jews. He had choice words for Tanzanian President Julius Nyerere, with coward, prostitute, and old woman making the list. Zambian President Kenneth Kaunda was not spared, as Amin described him as an imperialist puppet and bootlicker. Kaunda, on his part, described Idi Amin as a madman and buffoon. Even the Queen of England, Queen Elizabeth II, was not spared his mockery, and Idi Amin once offered to become the King of Scotland in order to lead them to independence from Britain. He also allegedly sent her a telegram that read, "Dear Liz, if you want to know a real man, come to Kampala." White people residing in Uganda were forced to carry Idi Amin on a throne and kneel before him while posing for photographs. Peace Corps volunteers were ejected from the country. Likewise, the United States Marines who were guarding the American embassy in Kampala were also ejected. A reporter for the Daily Telegraph, Christopher Munion, who was detained at the notorious Makindye military barracks and witnessed 4 of his cellmates being killed with sledgehammers, wrote that Amin was capricious, violent, impulsive, and aggressive, but his shrewdness, ruthless cunning, and his capacity to consolidate power with calculated terror should not be underestimated. There is no accurate record of Amin's death toll, but it has been estimated to be about 500,000 victims. Many of them were foreigners, university students, and intellectuals. So many others were unknown. Mass killings and torture were conducted at Amin's notorious Public Safety Unit and Safe Research Bureau. Prisoners were made to execute each other using sledgehammers, and even one of Amin's wives was reportedly murdered, dismembered, and then sewn back together in order for her to be recognized by her children. A number of political opponents were killed during one of his killing sprees, and their bodies were thrown to crocodiles while their severed heads were kept in the deep freezer of his palace in Kampala. Idi Amin was also reported to have entertained his guests at dinner with the frozen heads on the table. Notable among these victims was the Anglican Archbishop of Uganda, Janani Luwum. The Ugandan dictator was frequently accused of cannibalism, which he never denied, but stated instead that he didn't like human flesh as it was too salty for him. How he came to this conclusion, he never explained. Idi Amin gave himself different titles and asked the media to always address him with his full titles whenever they talked about him. He named himself Lord of all beasts of the earth and fishes of the sea, Conqueror of the British Empire in Africa in general and Uganda in particular. He invented medals and decorations which he wore emblazoned on his military uniform. Amin was so ruthless that he had his opponents face decapitation on live television whilst ordering his victims to be dressed in white so that the blood would be clearly visible. The same way Idi Amin came into power was the same way he left, through a military coup. After 8 years of bloodletting in the absence of war in Uganda, Amin's reign of terror came to an end. In 1978, he sent troops to Tanzania in a bid to annex a desolate spur to the west of Lake Victoria. Amin's downfall, however, came in 1979 when Ugandan troops who had crossed into Tanzania began looting and wrecking villages along the Kagera River. Tanzanian President Julius Nyerere dispatched an armored column with 3 tanks in retaliation, in which hundreds of Ugandan exiles agreed to join the Tanzanian forces, and it was a triumphant entry into Uganda as Kampala was taken. A young Ugandan army officer, Colonel Oyite Ojok, led the 3 tanks. The inability of Idi Amin's army, or even his Libyan allies, to withstand the counter-offensive attack caused him to flee the country at first to Tripoli in Libya, then later to Saudi Arabia. Amin remained in Saudi Arabia with some of his wives and children until 1989, when he snuck out of the country using a fake passport to fly to Kinshasa, the capital of Zaire, now the Democratic Republic of Congo. He planned to return to Uganda to regain power, but the authorities in Zaire recognized him and held him. Uganda rejected him unless he was ready to stand trial for his crimes, and as no other country was ready to provide him asylum, Saudi Arabia accepted him back to their country on the grounds that he would no longer participate in political activities. Since then, Amin lived a quiet life in Saudi Arabia until his death on August 16, 2003. He reportedly suffered hypertension, kidney failure, and eventually a coma from which he never woke up. He was 78 years of age, although some media outlets announced him to be 80. The New York Times, while announcing Idi Amin's death, described him as beefy, sadistic, and telegenic, while the Washington Post tagged him as unquestionably evil and perversely fascinating. Many other people had choice words to describe this enigma who made the world shiver from his blatant and relentless lust for blood. Even in exile, Amin showed no remorse for his actions, but told reporter Ricardo Orizio, who paid him a visit in Saudi Arabia, that he was still on top of things and was still a man of influence. If not for the fact that his return to power was frustrated, he would have been ready to get back and deal even more decisively with his perceived enemies. In the end, he died of natural causes after wasting countless innocent lives. Idi Amin's actions crumbled Uganda and nearly sent the country into oblivion. And the story of the Butcher of Uganda will always be told even from generation to generation. If you enjoyed the video, don't hesitate to like and share it with your friends. You can subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell to receive the latest videos as they drop. Also, don't miss out our next video on the rise and fall of Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana.